So in part 1 we talked about how Littlefinger spread a rumor of incest to make Jon Arryn want to send Sweet Robin away, to give Lysa a motive to kill Jon Arryn so Littlefinger could marry Lysa and kill her and take temporary control of the Vale. We also talked about how Littlefinger gave the Iron Throne debt problems to cause the Iron Bank to call back its loans to allow Littlefinger to bail out people and make allies in the Vale. Littlefinger has everything Stannis needs to take the throne, but Littlefinger doesn't seem to like Stannis, or the Starks, or the Lannisters, or Aegon. Does Littlefinger like anyone? Well, let's explore whether Littlefinger is aligned with the Martells. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to say this is unlikely, as Littlefinger is aligned with the Corbrays, who fought against the Martells on the Trident. Lyn Corbray even took down Lewin Martell. But who knows, maybe Littlefinger is going to backstab the Corbrays. Now, at the beginning of A Game of Thrones, Ned is undecided about whether he's going to take the job in King's Landing. However, Littlefinger and Lysa send a letter to Catelyn saying that Jon Arryn was murdered by the Lannisters. Now, Littlefinger knows Catelyn, and he knows her commitment to family duty and honor, so Littlefinger knows that Catelyn is going to ask Ned to go to King's Landing. Littlefinger wants the Starks in King's Landing for some reason, but then a snag happens in Littlefinger's plan. Someone uses Littlefinger's dagger to try to kill Bran. It was probably Joffrey, but we're not 100% sure. Catelyn unexpectedly shows up in King's Landing and sends Sir Roderick to go see Aeryn Santagar, the Master-at-Arms. Now, House Santagar is sworn to House Martell, and Silva Santagar is good friends with Arianna. It would be almost comically incompetent if Doran Martell didn't have such a well-positioned Dornishman on his payroll. Now, as Master-at-Arms, Aeryn Santagar should know exactly whose dagger this is. He should know it's Robert's dagger, won from Littlefinger, and yet he stays quiet. I imagine he'd want to check with Doran Martell before doing anything rash. Now, the dagger is one of the few times that Varys and Littlefinger team up. It's uncertain if either man knows who actually attacked Bran, but if Ned finds out that either Joffrey or Robert attacked Bran, he's likely to leave King's Landing. And that's not what Littlefinger wants. And the truth about the dagger is likely to cause conflict, which is not what Varys wants. And so Littlefinger is rather clever. He pins the dagger's ownership on the one person who is in the King's party who's not in King's Landing: Tyrion. Now, only 3 people really know the full history of this dagger: Littlefinger, Robert, and likely Santagar. So Santagar actually has a lot of power over Littlefinger at this point. Now, Santagar dies in the Riot of King's Landing, and it's almost certain that the Riot of King's Landing was orchestrated by someone. The riot begins when a woman with a dead baby somehow gets past the Gold Cloaks. Joffrey throws her money, but she weirdly ignores it, and instead drops her baby like a sack of flour and yells "whore" at the queen. Also, the mob is supposed to be starving, and yet the man who tries to kidnap Sansa has garlic breath. Now, Jaime thinks Varys orchestrated the riot, but almost all evidence points to Littlefinger. After all, he's the one with connections in the Gold Cloaks. But also, all of the results seem to benefit Littlefinger. First, Santagar dies, a man who knows about Littlefinger's dagger. Second, Lolly Stokeworth is raped. Littlefinger spends quite a bit of time attending Stokeworth dinners in A Game of Thrones. Now, with their constant banqueting, it seems that the Stokeworths are rather wealthy, and they also have a claim to Rosby lands. The Rosbys are rich enough that Cersei tries to steal their family fortune. So anyone marrying Lollies could interfere with Littlefinger's debt schemes. Her rape and pregnancy makes it difficult to marry her off. Third, Preston Greenfield dies and Balon Swan replaces him on the Kingsguard. Now, let's keep in mind that Balon Swan was also attending Stokeworth dinners. As a Kingsguard, Balon can now no longer marry. Fourth, Tyrek Lannister is kidnapped. Littlefinger seemed very interested in having a Lannister ward and seemed genuinely angry at Tyrion when he reneged on his deal to send Myrcella to the Vale. Tyrek is also married to a Hayford whose lands are close to King's Landing, much like the Stokeworths and the Rosbys. Fifth, the High Septon is murdered. In A Game of Thrones, Littlefinger specifically says that the High Septon is difficult to deal with regard to loans to the Iron Throne. But the biggest piece of evidence that the riot was Littlefinger's doing is the attempted kidnapping of Sansa. We know that Littlefinger is weirdly obsessed with Sansa and kidnaps her later, but also her attempted kidnapping is facilitated by Mandon Moore. Even though Moore is assigned with protecting Sansa, he leaves her during the riot and protects Joffrey instead. Let's keep in mind that Mandon Moore is only on the Kingsguard because Jon Arryn brought him from the Vale, though Jon Arryn didn't like him. This means he was likely recommended by Lysa, which means he's actually recommended by Littlefinger. Mandon Moore being Littlefinger's man makes complete sense, as Moore later tries to kill Tyrion. Tyrion knows about Littlefinger's dagger and is about the only person smart enough to decipher Littlefinger's accounting. The point of all of this is that Mandon Moor looks like Littlefinger's man, and the Ride of King's Landing looks like Littlefinger's doing. So unless Littlefinger is betraying his own man like he did with Sir Dantos, he is not working with House Martell. Now what about House Tyrell? Could he be working with the House of Flowers? Now right off the bat I'm going to say this is unlikely, as in a Game of Thrones, Loras asks Ned for his leave to go attack the mountain. Littlefinger makes fun of Loras, which influences Ned's decision to say no. But it's more than that. Littlefinger is actually trying to bring down House Tyrell. What do I mean? Well, Littlefinger is weirdly interested in House Florent. House Florent has split loyalties during the War of the Five Kings. The very charming Lady Selyse is married to Stannis, but Lord Alistair Florent and most of the Florent troops decide to follow their liege lord, Mace Tyrell. Stannis considers the Florents a lost cause as their lands lie too close to Tyrell lands. Now, as I said, Littlefinger's mind is on the Florents. He brings up that Lady Selyse is Edric Storm's aunt in a Game of Thrones, and in A Clash of Kings, he's the one that brings up that Lady Selyse converted to the religion of the Red God. Littlefinger spends some time making fun of the Florents before finally recommending that the Lannisters spread a rumor that Lady Selyse fathered her daughter with her fool. Now this insult seems to rally House Florent around Selyse. After Renly dies, House Florent suddenly wants to support Stannis, and Littlefinger seemed to fully expect this result. Most of the lords who rode with Lord Renly to Storm's End have gone over, banner and blade, to Stannis. Led by the Florents, I'd wager. Varys gave him a simpering smile. You would win, my lord. Lord Alistair was indeed the first to bend the knee. Now Littlefinger convinces the Tyrells to throw in with the Lannisters, so at the Battle of the Blackwater, the Florents and the Tyrells are on opposite sides. After the war, the Florents' lands and incomes are given to Garland Tyrell. Now this is quite a shift of power to House Tyrell, and I imagine House Hightower would look at this as encroachment. After all, the Tyrells already control the City Watch of Oldtown, and we can ask Ned Stark how important controlling City Watches are. Or, I guess we can't. On top of this, Mace Tyrell is already Warden of the South, and Marjorie is Queen. Conflict seems to be a-brewin' as Lord Hightower is married to a Florent, and Lord Elechine Florent has gone to the Hightowers for protection. So Littlefinger has created a power vacuum that has caused a conflict in the Reach between the Tyrells and the Hightowers. But an even bigger conflict is arising with House Tarly. Randall Tarly is Sam's dad and is in charge of Tommen's forces along the Trident. And you may have not noticed, but Randall Tarly has money troubles. When in Maidenpool, Brienne notices a galleass, a galley, and a cog. That's right, the Braavosi were calling in debts in Maidenpool. And Randall was trying to make nice with them. When one of his men has a dispute with a man off the galleass, he immediately sides with the man on the galleass. Now we don't know if the Braavosi are calling in debts from the Tarleys or from the Mootons of Maidenpool, but it doesn't matter, as Dickon Tarly is married to Eleanor Mooton. Now Randall Tarly could ask his wife for some money, but he's married to a Florent, whose lands and incomes have been seized. Let's keep in mind that Randall Tarly is part of the conversation at the end of A Dance with Dragons. He knows the Iron Throne is broke. He also collected some brave companion heads which may have whispered to him secrets. The point of this is that Randall Tarly is a very well-informed man. He may know that there are bigger things going on than the race for the Iron Throne, and that the Tyrells and the Lannisters are a sinking ship. Now, as I said before, Littlefinger loves to collect wards. He has the Winged Knight, who's half Tully and half Arryn. He has Sansa, who's half Stark and half Tully. And it seems quite likely that he has Tyrek Lannister. But here's the thing, House Manderly has debt problems, and they're asking Davos to bring them Rickon, a half Tully, half Stark. And Randall Tarly has debt problems, and A Dance with Dragons ends with him in custody of Marjorie, a Tyrell. Randall Tarly also seems to have custody of Harry Karstark, the Lord of Carhold, and if the Manderleys didn't bake them into pies, they have custody of 3 Freys. So it seems Littlefinger's debt scheme is larger than just the Vale. But I haven't yet explained why Littlefinger is interested in the Starks. Why did he want Ned to come to King's Landing? And we'll talk about that in part 3.